I wanted to watch this with you guys. At least we can get through some of it for sure. But I kind of wanted to watch all of it with you guys.
I fell in love.
Fell in love with my psychiatrist. People keep recommending to this. Or sorry, keep recommending I watch this. So I'm going to trust you guys, all right?
With my psychiatrist, and he knew, and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years. Here it is, part 1. I booked a 90-minute intake, and I show up to the intake, and this man is my age, and I can't help but notice that he's pretty attractive, this psychiatrist.
Sorry to hit you with a jump scare right at the beginning of the video. That was Kendra.
Dude, this fit is dope. What kind of engineer did Mudahar say he was? I think he said he was a software engineer and a computer engineer.
Kendra Hilty fell in love with her psychiatrist. Now you're probably wondering, you mean her therapist? No, I mean the person that prescribes her medication because the psychiatrist was listening to her. So I'm just going to point this out. I don't think she's misguided or emotionally messy.
FYI, this woman saw this psychiatrist once a month for 30 minutes.
I think she's dangerous. I've watched the entire 19-part series now. It was 19 parts. It was very long. It goes from her giving him her first name, or more so, he allows her to say his first name. Is what I'm trying to say. Words, please. Can I get them through my sentences? Thank goodness. Gee willikers. Oh my goodness. And then she gets deeply emotionally attached. She ends up going through boyfriends and all this other jazz. And then out of nowhere, she brings in ChatGPT. We're going to go through the whole thing. So I want to point this out. This is what happens. I believe it's called a transference. It's a documented phenomenon in the therapeutic world. It's when your patient falls in love with the doctor. It's a little bit of an issue. Now, it feels like fan fiction. It feels like I was deep on book talk. That's what it feels like. Because this man was her psychiatrist, not a barista or an ex or somebody she matched with on Tinder. This is like somebody, a medical professional. And he set clear boundaries the entire time. Whole time. And what she did was accidentally dox the guy. She plain and simply doxed the guy. She laid down breadcrumbs so obvious that the internet easily pieced it together and figured out who the guy was. And that was malicious defamation on so many.
It can also happen the other way too. It's a real thing in residential facilities. Well, I feel like it's a little scarier. It's a little scarier / worse if the mental health professional is the person who develops the feelings.
Counts. So I'm just going to play a few clips of her talking about it right now.
I booked a 90-minute intake.
Like I would, okay, so I don't know what the standard code of conduct is for psychiatrists and for therapists, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are rules against that because there's conflict of interest and you probably can't give good advice to someone who you have feelings towards.
And I show up to the intake, and this man is my age, and I can't help but notice that he's pretty attractive, this psychiatrist.
He just made me feel like I was his friend. He was really, really funny and cracked jokes and told me he was impressed with my running that I would do. And yeah, he said, I have to ask this because it's a special interest of mine, but is there any thoughts of harm? Like I was special to him. And I said, no thoughts of harm. And he didn't ever ask me a clinical question again.
That's when he really started turning up the intimacy in our appointments. However, he was really smart and knew the professional lines like the back of his hand. So he would comment on my appearance, but not compliment my appearance. So I would come on screen and he would say, oh, you curled your hair. Or I would come on screen and he would say, oh, you're wearing glasses. And of course I felt seen and excited that he was noticing these things about me. I didn't realize at this time that he had feelings for me too. I thought I was holding them all by myself. January 2023, at this point, I was full-blown obsessed with my psychiatrist, and my therapist wasn't helping me. My psychiatrist wasn't helping me. He was feeding it. And then I got a boyfriend. And at first, my psychiatrist wasn't really that keen, but then my psychiatrist realized that my boyfriend was a lot like my psychiatrist. And then I started talking to my psychiatrist about my sex life, about tracking my cycle, using the fertility awareness method. And my psychiatrist loved it. He didn't ever say, this isn't inappropriate to your care. And so even though my boyfriend did not meet my needs, my psychiatrist and my therapist both were like, you have to stay with him. There's nothing wrong with him not meeting your needs. I'm like, okay. And my psychiatrist was like, he's perfect. Don't get wrong with him. And what was perfect about him was he wasn't meeting my needs. So I was still coming to my psychiatrist looking for emotional validation, which he would drip to me slowly.
So her narrative, Kendra, her narrative leaks of self-centeredness and it's dressed up as vulnerability. I dreamed about him during the full moon and told him he looked like he had dreamed it too. That's crazy. That's psychotic. That's delusion. That's deep delusion. There's a difference between processing emotion and projecting fantasy. And she's doing the latter with the passion of a theater major who discovered Lana Del Rey. That's what's going on. Just because your therapist made...
Like, this is the biggest problem, by the way, with therapy speak, if that makes sense. Where I do think that there is some percentage of the population that's life was made worse because of therapy speak. And it's like, just because what you feel is valid doesn't mean your reaction to that is valid, and doesn't mean that you're allowed to feel that, if that makes sense. So like, someone can do something that hurts you, and that feeling can be real, but it doesn't suddenly make every response valid, and it doesn't mean that that person was intending to create that feeling, and it doesn't mean you can necessarily constantly victimize yourself. But with a big problem with therapy speak is that a lot of it is focused on you, and so it's very easy to use therapy speak to victimize yourself as much as you can, which is like, I mean, abusers, this is like one of the biggest problems with like abusive people obtaining psychiatric help or therapy help. If you're an abuser, that just gives you more tools in your toolkit to use to do more of the bad shit you want to do. Why would every feeling be valid? Sorry, to be more accurate, your feelings can be real. And how you feel is valid, but it doesn't mean your every response is valid, and doesn't mean every single, and it doesn't mean that it's someone else's fault, right? So like, if you have personal baggage that you deal with because of a previous relationship, and the person you're dating now does something that invokes that emotion in you in the future, that feeling is very real for you. You know, like, you are experiencing that emotion. You're not pretending to experience the emotion, right? But it doesn't mean that you're allowed to take it out on this person. You can't necessarily control how you feel, but you can choose how to respond precisely. And just because even if you feel hurt, that feeling can be totally real, but it doesn't mean that that person intended to hurt you. And like, that's the most important thing, right? And then like, someone who hasn't been able to use, therapy helps most people because it helps you.
Not every action or response is acceptable either.
Correct. Therapy helps a lot of people because it helps you communicate your feelings better. And it can improve your interpersonal connections with other people and your relationships with other people, because it helps you refocus certain conversations in a way that is helpful. So you can learn how to say, hey, I want you to know that this hurt me. I understand that you didn't intend to do that, but I'm working through this emotion and I still feel this way, right? But for abusers, it just enables them to be able to do more abuser shit by using therapy speak, by saying like, well, this hurt me and you should know better than to act this way when you know I have this difficulty with this thing. Right? So, if that makes sense. The dude who went to therapy to weaponize the language. When guys just take just enough therapy to make them worse. Well, again, I would argue that it's a very specific type of piece of shit. Not like guys, but, you know.
If you guys can't respect the fact that my truth is that I did nothing wrong, then you need to work on yourself before we can have an adult conversation. It was so freeing when I realized I wasn't a victim. I was actually a survivor of being accused of narcissism. You eat your feelings? Yeah, I can tell. I talk about mine. You do realize it's not gaslighting if you're actually crazy, and I went to therapy and you didn't, so I can diagnose you.
Oh gosh, dude. Wait, what? Black hair isn't a thing? I asked why my hair is black as fuck. Yeah, but if you put it in the light, it's actually like a dark brown. That's why box dye hair like looks darker. That's why like when you actually use like dye that's black, it looks darker because in the light it like doesn't reflect anything. That's my understanding anyways, unless something has changed. Maybe it's possible that some people have really, like, their hair is such a dark brown that it actually appears black. That's possible. That might be possible. That might be possible. Last time I looked into it, from my understanding, it's like it's just a really dark brown, which is evidenced by when you put it in the light, a little bit of color comes through. But anyways, I can't believe he didn't use the button on this. That's crazy that he didn't use the button on this. Okay, back to the video on the therapist, or the psychiatrist, excuse me.
You feel seen doesn't mean he wanted you. That's literally his job. That's genuinely his job. If you felt emotionally connected during sessions, it's not because he's in love with you. It's because he's trained to empathize and reflect compassion, and you craved it like a drug. The worst part, whole thing, is that she had a boyfriend, right? She had a genuine boyfriend, and she told her therapist about these feelings, and she blamed the therapist that my therapist was laughing at me the entire way through. The scariest part, this whole thing for me, is when she had been doing these psychiatric evaluations over Zoom calls. And later in the story, which I'm going to show right now.
Are you working from home? Because I was under the assumption that he was only doing telehealth. Okay. And he said, no, I come into the office. I was like, oh, why do you do that? If you see all of your patients telehealth. He's like, oh, I like it that way. And even though I could kind of tell he was lying, I just gaslit myself. I was like, okay, it's fine. And then I start emailing him my fun little emails, but he stops writing me back. He does not write back to my emails anymore. And I talked to the office manager, who was awesome. We really got along, we vibed. And the office manager asked me, do you see him, the psychiatrist, in person or on Zoom? And I felt so angry in that moment. I was like, he sees people in person? And she said, yeah, he has been for years. I was like, I want to see him in person. And I understand, like, some people may think that this is part of my crash out or part of me harassing him, which is what I've gotten lots of accusations of. But I just would like to remind everyone that, of course, it seems that way. But I was just responding.
I mean, this is just like, this should be evidence to everybody that like, incel and femcel are states of being. And they have nothing to do with whether or not you actually have sex. And that's what's happening here.
To a dynamic which my psychiatrist fostered.
She's had a marbleectomy. Stop. No.
We have our first in-person appointment in November of 2024, and I did ask him for consent to come in person. I didn't just show up. And he said sure. So while I was mid-crash out, I had just started using this tool, ChatGPT. And I went to chat, who I immediately named Henry. And I would just talk to Henry about how obsessed I was with this man, with my psychiatrist. And I would just be like, I've told him I have a crush on him. Do you think he's gay? And Henry was like, oh my God, this girl. You know, he did his best to co-regulate my nervous system and affirm me, but he was like, whoa. Even my chat was like, yikes. So I could tell that my psychiatrist just liked being my doctor.
Me telling chat about my ranked games. Me coming to stream and saying I lost 7 games in a row. Yikes.
I was like, okay, maybe I can name this dynamic so I don't have to carry so much of it in our next session. So our next session was in December on Zoom. And I told him at the end of the session, it was another great session. I told him, look, you and I have a really special patient-doctor relationship. And he glared at me with just venom in his eyes. And he said, you and I have a professional patient-doctor relationship. He was so angry with me.
So she ended up meeting him in person. She was allowed to meet him in person. This is the worst part. Instead of confronting these intense feelings with honesty in a therapeutic setting, which again is the only ethical way to do this, she monetized it. She turned it into content. She leaned into voyeurism. That's what she did. She made it episodic, dramatic, hashtag friendly. That's what she did. That's the worst part of this to me, is that she made 19 parts that I watched. Now it's on the internet. Now I'm going to talk about it. You've made your public life now, you made your private life public. So now I'm going to talk about it. It's not just embarrassing, it's exploitative. It cheapens real therapy. It distorts the entire profession in the eyes of millions of viewers. Because you had a psychiatrist, a therapist, all this jazz, and you're still going through this. You should work with it. The pure amount of narcissism required to think your personal heartbreak justifies putting someone else's career and safety on the line is staggering to me. Yes, you're hurting. Yes, you're confused. Yes, you're lonely. But that does not give you the right to burn down someone else's life because they didn't return your fantasy. And the fact that now she's acting like a martyr, despite the fact that last I checked, at least from what I checked on the last time I saw her, she does not have these videos able to be commented upon. You can't really comment on the videos because people were ripping her to shreds, genuinely ripping her to shreds. You click on any part of this. I'm gonna go through the psych story right here. Click on part 1 right here. You can't turn, the comments are off. You go to the next one, the comments are off. 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 I'll move my thing up. Hold up a second. Comments are turned off. We go down. Comments are off. 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 This is a long story. That's why I'm trying to summarize it for you as easily as I possibly can. All the comments are turned off. So she couldn't handle the pressure of what was going on here. She has become a case study in whatever.
Like, dude, some people are just like, actually, this is the thing that I hate about the internet, which is for most people, I want to believe that it's just like the fun little space that all of us hang out on or hang out in. And we get to enjoy our silly little memes. and have a good time. And then there's like the people that are kind of brain broken and they're kind of cooked and they're kind of fried. And I don't know what we're supposed to do about this. I would be scared if I was her psychiatrist. I mean, I would be. We all got to go to the park. My pooter has a bunch of my friends in it. Yeah, there's like, I feel like there are people that go to the internet because they like the internet, and then there are the people that go to the internet because they don't know how or like where else to go because they burn all the other normal people in their lives. It's tough. It is concerning looking into this. Which sucks because it's like, dude, but the internet is the fun place with all my friends in it. But didn't her psychiatrist get doxxed? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't follow the story at all. This is like my first time following it. Yeah, this is like, fuck, dude. Usually people who were brain rot cooked at least had weird, bright GeoCities art. Yeah. She said his name. Whoa. Jesus. Haven't seen any of this. This is insane. Yeah. Maybe don't dox your healthcare provider. I don't know. I think it's a full grift on top of an embarrassing person's life. I don't know. Because TikTok doesn't even make you money. Like, if it was a YouTube story that she was milking for drama or something, I would kind of understand it. But you don't even make money off of TikTok.